So this is August 14th, 2023, Old Farm District Neighborhood Association Board Meeting. This is the public meeting. We are going to be joined by City Councilor Mike Riley today. We've got one guest or two guests in the audience, as well as the board. Some of our board is absent today. We do apologize about the technical difficulties. Normally we meet in a different room, but the ukulele group of Bend hijacked that room from us.
They're usually at the environmental.
The other UGB.
So basically the way we're going to do this meeting today is supposed to be a Q&A and just a sort of a casual conversation with Mike. Jim is with us from Southeast Bend Neighborhood Association. If anyone has any questions, Ross is over there. So either raise your hand or take off the mic and just blurt out loud so we can hear you. It will probably be the easiest. Once again, I do apologize for this technical issues. Normally our land use chair would be here. We have no idea where she is right now. Hopefully she is okay. Does anybody, do you know about the projects that were, I never got to see the high quality.
I got to see them. I haven't yet had them posted, but I'm not prepared to speak about them right now.
Okay. Jen, would you be prepared to get your phone in like 20 minutes? Not now.
Let me see if I can.
I'll do the same.
Okay. So on our newsletter, we did have it attached.
No, when you got the high res copy, right?
I got the 73 unit one.
So there's
I never saw anything.
Is that the
after
one on?
initial one, which was-
Oh, we all did. I'll find it and I'll forward it on any board.
And I found out why I didn't get it before. So did there's supposedly two developments. One's across from Silver Rail, and it's mixed use, I believe.
Yes.
And then there's another one, but I didn't get the other location. So if you two can figure out that, that's great. So at this point, normally we used to have an NLA update, which is the Neighborhood Leaders Compliance Update. That no longer exists. People have questions, they can send them by email to the City Council. We do have, there is still NART, which is the Neighborhood Association Roundtable. That has been extremely active since the NLA got discontinued.
Yeah, in fact, we're having a meeting tomorrow night. Myself and Ted Mayer from Aubrey View and Michelle from Southeast Bend kind of took an action to try to develop a mission statement. And we've got some disagreements, the three of us, so we're going to present everything tomorrow night.
You're not sending it.
Discussion on what this should look like and where it should be headed.
But you're not sending out anything in advance of that meeting.
Just to the people who are on the mailing list so far.
Okay, well, I don't know if I'm on that. I should be on that.
It should be.
I haven't received anything. I don't know if anything's gone out yet.
Yeah, I don't have the mailing list, so I assume that whoever has been on Joette's mailing list is going to be.
Okay, well, I
There
would,
was something about a
Joette
week
has not,
ago.
Joette has not been present since the NLA was disbanded, so she wouldn't have my information on there. So
So
I'd
we-
appreciate it getting forwarded if you have it.
We'll take care of that after the meeting.
Yeah.
So essentially for the people that are listening, and Mike can hear this as well, the NART is trying to figure out how to coordinate 13 neighborhood associations individually without having city staff or anything's assistance. So you'll get
And
filled
where
in
we go
as
from
it happens.
Yeah, where do we go from here, and how do we, like I say, how do we coordinate all the neighborhood associations? So we're going to handle it.
So the primary topic we will now start for this meeting is the Old Farm District set up in our goal setting session for this year is to have two public forums in the general meeting. Recently, the City of Bend has informed the people that the City Council is going to be initiating a transportation utility fee and has created a roundtable of sorts, which is going to meet a total, I believe, 3 times to address the fee. The Old Farmers decided that we're going to use one of our forums, and hopefully at the end of September, with the city's assistance, and we're going to try to hash out some of the details today with Mike, to answer general questions regarding the transportation utility fee. Just so everybody knows, I am on that roundtable. So are 3 other neighborhood associations as well as other groups in town. There are lots of questions, a lot more questions at this point than answers. A lot of these questions you can direct to the board, or you can direct to city council or city staff. I can tell you at this point, most of them probably don't have an answer. But all of the questions, I believe, are getting put into a long queue of things to sort of think about. Mike, at this point, thank you for showing up. If you wouldn't mind, give us a small background about the transportation utility fee. City council did meet 2 weeks ago and sort of talked about it, and we have that link on our website if people want to see that hour-long conversation. And even the city councilors are having differences of thoughts. Some of them. Yeah, Mike.
So I'll just give you kind of a what, why, a little bit about the amount and the process. I'm trying not to get into too many details. We can go into more details if you want to, but I thought I would just give kind of a quick overview. So it's you know, the what is a transportation utility fee. You all pay utility fees and or charges for your water and your sewer and water now. So it would be similar to that. And then it would be charged monthly. All households and businesses with an utility account, the city of OFDNA, would actually get charged. The why behind it is basically kind of a couple different reasons that add up to why. One is that we all use transportation every single day, either directly or indirectly, whether we drive, walk, bike, we roll in some other way. Directly is getting to work. For me, I went to work on my bike today. I often ride in the weather's good. I don't tend to ride in the winter so much because I've fallen a couple times. That's my personal thing. But I drive as well. Also, just when you have to get to the grocery store, workers have to come in on the roads, right? I mean, we're all using it in all kinds of different ways, just like we have to bring water back. We are using transportation every single day. So it's it's the only core service like that. It doesn't have some kind of user fee associated with it. In particular, it can pay for ongoing street maintenance and operations, and some of the programs that we want to do to make streets safer and also to make them have more options for people beyond driving a car, trying to make the system more balanced for walkers, bikers, and to some extent for transit as well, but transit is funded. General fund dollars are limited and costs are rising across the city as the community grows and demands for services everywhere are increasing. We can get more into that, and we probably would get more into that in the presentation. And then we really do, the one unfunded need is really this operations and maintenance program. It's about better service across the whole year. It's about more options for the community on how to get around, and it's about improving safety and doing more of the kinds of things that the neighborhood street safety program is funding, but trying to keep more of that sort of thing. So one thing we heard about at our roundtable last week as an example was the crossing on Greenwood at 6th Street for pedestrians and cyclists, and a variety of people in the community that support that, including the senior representatives that were there, people from the Latinx community. And I know people who walk like in that neighborhood that are, like myself, I've just talked about how important that is from a safety perspective. And we know there's needs like that across the community.
And the Orchard District Neighborhood Association had been pushing for that for years.
And we have a portion in the bond measure, right? We have about $500,000 a year for neighborhood stuff, but that's not nearly enough for all the improvements that are needed across the whole thing. So we're looking as a council, we agreed that we would start with about $15 per month as the average cost for residential use to generate about $15 million a year. Now that by itself won't generate the $15 million. There will also be a fee for businesses or commercial enterprises. Their fee is more complicated to calculate what it will be per month. And we're going to have a little subgroup that's going to look at that in terms of public input. And it's just more technical. So it sort of depends on the size and impact of the business. So it'll help generate that total amount of revenue. Roughly the revenue will get generated, a little more than 50% of it will be from the residential side, and the remaining balance, about 47, 48, will come from the commercial business side. I already said what it's going to pay for, And the issues that we still have to resolve are things like, what about people who have a limited ability? How do we deal with people with either limited incomes or lower income families? That is something we will be paying attention to because we know it's something we have to pay attention to. We already have a utility discount program in place that's expected to grow. The number of people who are eligible for that is expected to grow over the next year, more than double. We'll probably be applying the same kind of methodology to people in this situation and give them a discount for it. The other thing would be, how do we make this visitors contribute to this? We've heard a lot just so far in the comments we've gotten from the community that visitors need to also be paying. It can't just be one more thing on the back of the residents. And I think all the councilors are generally interested in at least looking hard at that. How it will fall out in the end remains to be seen, and it'll be part of that commercial piece. And then the last question is, should this be paired with some other kind of revenue stream? I can go into why we got to this as the next step in the funding strategy for transportation. But this was identified in the transportation system plan that I was part of. I think you were part of that too, Jim.
CTAC?
Yeah, CTAC. And the transportation system plan was not produced. And you know, those other revenue streams could be something like the gas tax. If you've been here long enough, you know that we've tried that once and it failed on the ballot. It could be a prepared food and beverage tax. And when I say prepared, I mean, like, for example, when my wife and I go out to celebrate our 30th anniversary, we're going to go to a restaurant that costs a little bit more money, and we could pay a fee there. It's not going to be a fee you pay to go to the store. It wouldn't be a fee you pay at Jack in the Box or somewhere like that, or 7-Eleven, for people who rely on that kind of place for their food. But you know, folks, it would basically get folks that are visitors, one, but also folks who maybe have some more disposable income than that. So it could be paired with something like that. But there are pros and cons to all those things, right? So that kind of gets at the amount, some of the things we're still thinking about. And the process, as James said, we have the roundtables. We're going to start doing the neighborhood association meetings next month. We're going to try to get to every single neighborhood association. That'll probably be myself and the mayor, Melanie Fiedler, and probably at least one staff person will come with us. Our goal is to have a decision on the rate and the implementation schedule by the end of the year. And the current thinking is we will begin implementation in July of 2024. But all that stuff is still remains to be seen, as well as even the council as a whole felt like we needed to pay for operations and maintenance, sweeping in the or snow plowing in the winter, sweeping lanes, making sure that sidewalks and bus stops are actually cleared, to the improving the pavement across the whole community, right? So there's this thing you may have heard about, pavement condition index. We're trying to make sure that the quality of our roads is good. We've done most of the bigger roads. The focus is going to slowly shift to a lot more local neighborhood streets, which can dovetail well with safety improvement projects, walking and biking projects. And then also, what else do we need to do about walking safety? The $15 a month for a residential customer, that 15 million gets us what we've identified we need at this point. Frankly, we probably need more. That's a really good starting place. And the question for the roundtables and the council is, are we going to do the full 15, or are we going to take something off the list? And if so, what are we going to not prioritize? Because the TSP said we needed to keep all of that.
So TSP is the Transportation System Plan. It is a long-term plan that was established multiple city councils ago before Mike was on city council, but he was part of the group that helped create it.
Can I say sort of things?
Yes,
So, we all pass a bond measure, right? That only pays for investments in new infrastructure. By state law, we cannot use that money for operations and maintenance programs we're talking about. It's off the table. It's to pay only for this. So, we have this great example of a multimodal corridor out here on Wilson. It's not too far from here. Sweeping that, plowing that, maintaining it over the life of that, and whether it's the roundabout, the sidewalks, the bike lanes. That bond measure cannot pay for that. Pay for the initial bill, but not for operating and maintenance. The other thing is that if you go to bendoregon.gov/transportation-fee, you can see and learn a lot more about the discussion about the transportation.
and a link to that is on the Old Farm District's website as well.
So that's kind of what I had. Again, we can go more into the why and the money stuff if people are interested tonight. We probably would do that. as part of the presentation.
So I guess the way we thought about doing this tonight, Mike,
Yes.
let's leave this casual. So you're online, then you have a question, please pose it. You're here in the room, you're a board member, please pose it. And then hopefully by the end of this casual conversation, Mike, you'll give us some other information that we need so that when we decide to hold this forum, which is most likely going to be here, we have to determine the actual room and secure all of that, but also what sort of format we'd like to do versus what you'd like to do. This isn't meant to be, it's not going to be a hostility forum. It's going to be a presentation is what we're shooting for, and then a long Q&A for the public to ask questions. But hopefully before that forum happens, we'll have some facts and some information to distribute to get some of this stuff answered. That way, Mike and Melanie Mayer don't have to continually repeat themselves over and over and over and over again. Every time they talk to a new group of people, there should be a place that people can have at least some basic questions answered. So using that as a premise, literally, let's just go around the room. Any comments?
Well, we talked last time about maybe moving our September meeting to later in the month to accommodate the city to be able to facilitate more of the questions people would ask. So we had targeted 9:25, which is Monday, which would be this time roughly, as a starting place. So obviously we can't throw a party without the hosts. So can you perhaps float that date and see if that's going to work with those people who might?
Yeah, I can check. I mean, I don't have this.
Well, at this point, let's coordinate sort of that, and then we have to make sure that the Parks
facilities.
Department can handle it.
Yeah.
And we're probably shooting for about an hour and a half.
9:25.
That's what we'd like. That
Yeah.
should be a good form.
And the facility is obviously a big deal, so we need to get on. That'd be a Monday.
Monday, last Monday of September.
The other question I had, you mentioned in the proposed fee structures, a variable amount for businesses. Is that entirely or partially key to their transportation load? For instance, if you have a work at home business that doesn't have any, is there still going to be a fee associated with that? Or is it, different than a trucking company?
That's a good question about the work at home business. I'm not sure I have an answer for that for you. Probably, you might guess, because it might be hard to administer and figure out if it really is that, so probably. But the idea is to tie it to the load that a particular type of business puts on the transportation system. Everything that's going on right now, as a little side note, which is also part of the funding plan of the transportation system plan that we adopted a few years ago. Is looking at the system development charges, the CCs that we charge them, and both updating the methodology as well as the cost basis for that. It's tied to this thing called engineering, something like that. That's in process right now, and it's there's a bunch of challenges with the way we do it now at the city. It's getting simplified, and there will be categories of business in there, and their SDC rates will be connected to the objectively measurable impact or load they have on the system. So the idea is to try to do something parallel with tough. But again, that part, we have a consultant that's working with us on the SDCs. This is really complicated stuff, and it has to be defensible, right? So it can stand up under scrutiny and even in theory in court. So the idea is to apply the same methodology. But we haven't, that's not really been dug into yet. So it's going to take a little bit more time. But that's the concept, yes.
Well, when we talked, James had
I doubt we'll have answers about all that by that date in September. We can maybe speak a little more to it, but we won't. I don't know if we'll have actual answers.
is it valuable to have such a gathering at that point in your discussion?
Oh, I think the gathering is very valuable. I just don't know.
Is that the right?
Oh,
Oh, no, okay. Do you think that you'd be far enough along in your process to make such a gathering valuable for both you and the people who attend?
Yeah, we want to do this in part as soon as we can, so that we're hearing from people sooner rather than later. It's always the challenge of any kind of process. Get as much input as you can early to inform the process rather than at the last stage when most of it's already been built.
Ross, any thoughts?
Yeah, what are the different like revenue streams you're looking at tapping into, and are you going to be trying to tap into multiple? Like, like for example, the electric utility bill for homeowners, residents, whatever you want to call it. That's one avenue, right? And then, but I think you're looking at multiple. You also mentioned like a gas tax or something similar to it.
So for the transportation utility fee, it'll be people that are currently or that become customers for the city of Bend. So between our water, our sewer utility, and the stormwater, we have like 30,000+ accounts. It's that group of people that would get transportation utility. We won't be attaching it to your electric bill or your natural gas bill. Those are separate utilities that we can't do that. As far as I know, it would be probably super complicated enough to go to the state, right? So that's, it'll be people that are city of Bend utility customers. That has to do that. The second part is, there's a variety of things that have been looked at as another revenue stream that could be looked at. I mentioned the gas tax. That could be across the whole year, or it could be seasonal in the sense that we have a base level and it goes up in the summer when there's more visitors, or it could be only to try to capture more revenue. Paired food and beverage tax, I think hopefully already explained how that would work. You could do a vehicle registration fee that's particular to the community. That would have to be done county-wide though. We can't do that as just a city. So it's a different kind of policy and political challenge, right? Because it's not just a city thing. So it's harder to kind of control and know if it's going to work out. If you raise it at county level and then distribute it to some to the county and the others to the city, probably based on population or number of cars registered, the address of the car. And then one other place that I didn't mention that is actually done. We did it on doing SDCs. We're doing something called tax increment financing. So there are some tax increment districts in the city already. One is the Murphy Crossing district. It's over here around the area where Murphy Crossing near Oxford Street and the Parkway.
That appears as a separate line on your property tax statement if you're property owner in town. It's not listed with the bonds. It's a separate line, and that was approved by.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's not an additional tax. What a tax increment does is it says that the date increment, the date it's put into place, as the taxable assessed value in that district grows, the growth, the marginal difference increment is reinvested back into that district for some set of purposes. And in that case, it's meant to go to transportation. In the central district, another good example in downtown, it's also been set up to be invested in transportation improvements and local business support. And a lot of that's going to be like streetscape improvements to kind of help catalyze redevelopment activity there. So that's another revenue stream that's actually in place already. So the bond measure is in place, increment financing is in place. The SDCs will be very soon. And then the last piece that the transportation system plan identified is tough. Those were the four pieces that we said we need to do these now. Part of it's got what they can be used to pay for, right? A bond measure cannot be used to pay for maintenance, but it's actually building new facilities that we have to pay. So our total stuff we have to maintain is going up. So the tough allows us all that flexibility and full control just for our community. So that's why it's chosen as the next step. So I hope that.
Yeah, that does. Thank you.
I can't remember your name.
And
Oh, I'm Ann Paget.
Oh, Ann, welcome. Do you have any questions?
I know.
Ding. We got a winner. All right. Jim, you're hiding in the back. Jim won.
Thanks. And I apologize. A couple of questions. One relates to the impact on the local school district and private schools. And then, secondly, non-residents. What is it that I know you touched on that some. Non-residents.
Yeah.
Transportation system.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm aware of the editorial and bulletin. We generated in the past. They said that you should be more detailed.
Right, so I think that's one of the things, take your last part first. That we heard at the roundtable was people just want a lot more specifics. So we're working on that and trying to come up with concrete examples. So, for example, one of the things that is just clearing the roads in the wintertime when we have a snowstorm, but not just the roads, also we've heard from several people via emails. I use the bus, or my mom uses the bus. In the winter, the bus stops are just covered in snow and they never get cleared, for example. You'll hear from people who ride bikes that the bike lanes are often unsafe early in the spring or in the fall because there's so much debris and they're not actively cleared. Things like maintaining the quality of the roads, as I said, so there's many roads that have potholes, there's cracks, they're just falling apart. So investing in that, we need to continue to do that. The goal we've set is to raise, there's an index that measures quality of roads, and we want to get ours up to about 76 right now. So that's the goal, is keep it at about 80, not trying to get to 100. Just pretty good quality, but it's not perfect. And then examples of programs are some of the things I talked about. So that crossing at 6th and Greenwood, the neighborhood street safety programs. I mean, you guys probably have examples of things you've advocated for in your neighborhood. The street safety program, I'm assuming.
Yes, so the old farms, we put them on Carroll Road is what we had requested for ours. And then another one is on Broster House. And that has not been done. They're both safety crossings for pedestrians. A previous one was a crossing actually right a block down from the senior center. So the old farm
On Big Market.
Yeah, so right behind you. All the neighborhoods were asked to pick projects a few years ago, and that was it's taken a couple of years to implement, and then depending on the weather and things, they were implemented in different orders. So for some people, they may not have known about it, but it did happen. There was lots of people that was not city staff, was not city councilors deciding these projects. It was the neighborhood associations that were deciding those projects. Jim, what do you know you guys picked for Southeast?
Yeah, well, I understand there's going to be a new round coming up. Well, I haven't heard much about it since the demise of the NLA. And supposedly this fall, I believe we're supposed to be starting to put our list together of what we want. And then somehow, again, since no NLA, I'm not sure how it's going to happen. All the NAs get together, kind of maybe rank them.
And I think there's also
But
existing
again, the
lists.
process will become very cloudy. Right?
And the existing list, I think there's some that have not been done. So I think part of it's going to be what on that list is still need to complete. Has there been anything else that's taken the pressure off the original targets? And if not, we're going to try to move through those. Some portion.
Yeah, I would like to believe that there'd be a chance to put in some new things.
Yes, and then there may be like neighborhoods might say, that one's not work anymore. Okay. I think there will be some back. But the volume of projects was a lot longer than we have the resources for. That's the point. Like, we need to do more of this. I think we hear all over the community about how do we deal with safety. So, for example, near where I live on where Galveston turns into Skyliner as you go west out of town towards the high school, by that roundabout at 14th, people just floor it. And as soon as they go through that roundabout, they're going 35 or 40 miles an hour. And the same when they're coming into town, they're not slowing down. So there's been some small safety improvements and just letting people know, like, what is your speed? Slow down. Like, that kind of stuff should be happening in lots of places now. So it's that kind of thing. So it's sort of that safety, promoting options, so more crossings, investments in certain places on biking stuff. And then that service around the quality of the roads. It's really things we're trying to focus on how we're going to use the money. Non-residents, as I said, we're basically going to look at hotels and motels. You know, we have to say, well, which business types primarily serve visitors? And how can we do
Gas
something
stations.
about them? Well, yeah,
Short-term rentals.
it's all of us, right? But hotels and motels in particular are clearly primarily serving people who are visiting, right? Even if it's my family who's coming.
Or another class of non-residents, people who live south, not road.
Well, okay, that's a different question.
And, you know, coming to the city services, so, you know, the one thing is there are some city boundaries.
Well, hang on, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
Yeah,
no,
let's
I don't know
let's
if
stick with
that's,
Jim one.
if that's where you're going with your question, that there's also people who say live, I have some good friends that live just north of Target and all that, and they're technically outside of the city, but they're inside the city every single day, everything they do, they are part of our community. I think that's a challenge. It's imperfect. We can't solve everything with every tool, I guess. Gas tax would probably help with those people because they're probably buying gas then. Food and beverage tax would probably help with some of those people as well because they eat dinner. Impact on local school districts and private schools. At this point, the plan is that schools would have to pay as well. Park district would have to pay as well. Nonprofits like St. Charles, like COCC, like the Western Cascades, because they're nonprofits, they actually don't pay property taxes, right? The first time we tried to vote on a transit system then, 12 or 15 years ago, one of the things that came up there is at the time, if you looked at who was generating the trips, the transit users, for transit users, it was these big institutions that actually didn't pay property taxes. So a lot of people were like, they're not helping solve the problem. I'm like, now, I'm not trying to pick on nonprofits, right? They're really important institutions in our community, provide vital services. And they have real impacts on any other business in the transportation system. So at the moment, we're thinking they're okay, just like everybody else. But we'll see what happens with, you know, what we hear from them.
I mean, that's a two-sided coin. And on one hand, you can argue that, for example, they have a huge impact on the roadways. The buses are here, there, and everywhere throughout the day. The other argument, or the other side of the coin, is that they're providing a level of service, they're taking cars off the road. Because parents don't have to transport their kids. That's sort of a dualism. On the one hand, buses are certainly a function, but you got a whole lot of parents that drive their kids to and from school every day. So the impact on public schooling is huge. So how do you address that? It's sort of, you know, it's tricky. I just encourage you to remind that either way, there's the impact. Parents are taking their kids, or the school district is passing their kids. Either way, there's the impact.
And those parents are already, if they're already paying a residential fee, and if they're a business owner, they're paying for their business. They're not paying. I mean, that would be another argument as well. Is it the schools that are causing it, or is it parents' choices to not have their kids on the bus?
Maybe we should charge per kid.
Yeah. I mean, sorry. Yeah, I think that particular question is going to get talked about. Yeah.
So on September 11th or 13th is the roundtable equity discussion. So that's a few hour long meeting, which is going to be live streamed to the public as well. And I'm sure many of these questions will be brought up as well.
I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more.
I got a couple of in the weeds questions.
Just anybody else.
I just did one point of clarification. You talk for user, in other words, if a particular house has say 3 cars, versus another college next door that only has one car, would there be a difference or is it just per property?
Well, probably not that example because we don't have, the city doesn't have a way to track that data. We don't, the city doesn't collect that kind of data. And there'll be no way to verify it. Like, just the administrative exercise to do that would be pretty expensive. So I guess I haven't asked that question. It'd be valid to ask the staff, but my guess is it's just making it more complicated. So you're spending more money.
You also have the situation where rental houses and short-term rentals, but in my experience, you've got rental houses that might have a car for every single person in the house. You might have one home with 5 or 6 cars, but they're not even showing up, may not be showing up on any of the city records, because that stuff may be going to the property owner. So the relationship between property and how many vehicles might be a huge disconnect to the city to be able to track.
So, I mean,
If it's one person with 7 vehicles, they're not driving all 7 that day on the road, especially at the same time.
and even households that, only have one car, maybe don't have a car at all, are still using the transportation system and causing, the other people to use it in various different ways. Services that they have, school, all that stuff. In some form, directly or indirectly, we use it every day, just like we use the sewer system and the water system. There's really no getting out.
And maybe use isn't even the right word, but maybe benefit.
Benefit, rely on, yes.
So Jim, did you have a specific question other than what you already asked? We can then continue to go around the room. I don't know if anybody's still online. I saw there was 2 people earlier, but can't tell.
A question more or less like, and I'm sure you guys are already talking about this, middle class in this town is getting buried alive. I'm one of those families that we're staring down the barrel of 20 to 25K for the sewer hookup. We're getting crunched. Everything's gone up by at least $800 sometimes. Like it feels like sometimes each month carries more food and gas and this and that, and everything goes up always, but it never goes down. So I'm concerned about how much stress that's going to put on already stressed out families and individuals. Be nice if the majority of this be put on visitors and rich people. We're dying out here. Can't budget no more.
I think it's a really valid concern, and it's something we're going to continue to talk about, in particular at the next roundtable. The roundtables, just so we're clear, don't have opportunities for public comment, but this is a way that we're trying to do input a little bit differently than we have in the past. So this is only the second time the city's used this mechanism, so we'll see how it works. Right, we're going to continue to try to refine it, but I think people can share input with us via email and coming to council meetings in the visitor section at the very beginning, 7 o'clock, first and third Wednesday of every month, and sharing that kind of comment.
And I support, like, there's stuff that needs to get done here.
Yeah.
And I support us moving towards figuring this out instead of kicking the can down the street like we've been doing for 20 some odd years. But at this point in the game, it's like one more thing, one more stress. And I worry about my people who are here and have lived here a long time. They're just like, we can't do anything. We can't live because we're paying all of this.
And what do you think? I'm curious. So some people have floated the idea, well, what if you did a tough some kind and sort of paired it with and asked for the voters? Because the tough the council can do on its own. Most of the other solutions we talked about require. So if we chose the gas tax or we chose a food and beverage and sort of paired them together at roughly the same time, made an ask of the community, asking you to make an investment, we're going to get the rest this other way. The challenge is if we end up with only part of it, we sort of haven't solved the problem, and we're kind of, perpetuating Because if we wait 5, 10 years, it'll be even more expensive to do that stuff, which is part of it. I agree with you, it's part of the problem.
Yeah, it's all in how you, the message you send to the community and how you phrase
Mhm.
this, what you're proposing here. Nobody is really interested in hearing you guys, see you guys knowing that you're part of our community. Yammer on for hours or roundabout a question. Give people bullet points. This is what's happening. This is what needs to happen. This is what we're proposing. Here's where you come in. You send it to the voters without them truly understanding the full picture, they're gonna shut it down. Because my mom is part of a crew that's like, I don't want to pay, I'm not gonna vote for any more taxes. We're getting buried. And I get that aspect, but I also understand how this process works now and how important it is to get these things in place. But then, like, is it gonna go up every year? Like, because everything else goes up every year. Gas, power, not by small portions. But these are decent percentages that we get a little bit of a tiny raise, and it's swallowed up by some raise in fees. We can never get ahead. And
It's all getting passed along, and stuff that may have been swept under for a few years post-pandemic. Every corner is now passing those fees along to the consumer, and the property owner can't get out of the way of it. So the cost of living in Bend is already extraordinarily high. And since we're trying to have this affordable housing initiative, it's sort of a double-edged sword, because you add taxes, you're not making it easier to live here, but the taxes, are probably necessary. I mean, the lines don't add up. So how can you fairly apply those? And the one thing I have not heard thus far is the phrase short-term rentals, which I think vast majority of property owners in Bend would support, because there are many of those homes and they all have vehicles and they're all using the service we provide, to the extent that many people in Bend just leave parts of Bend alone during the summer months because we're overrun with tourists. So I think short-term rentals would be a really viable place to start looking for a meaningful tax to help support the transportation system. And we have those people on record, as I understand. So
Yeah, how many
wouldn't be-
warehouse rentals are there now? Over 1,000?
Yeah, I have to get the numbers.
Yeah.
close to that last time.
Karen Johnson's on our board. So she just texted me. She is in Minnesota. So,
I think we've been targeting STRs quite a bit over the last year or two as well, but we just expanded the radius or whatever within which you can have STRs. So I think that's going to help with that immensely. I would want to be cautious with how many times we target STRs so quickly. We're changing too many variables to understand what's having the right impact.
We started the expansion of STRs, but they were already, that was way out of the barn before anything was done on it.
Yeah, and the existing ones are all grandfathered.
a lot of them. were.
10 years.
But there was
Well, that's, no, there's a certain group that are grandfathered beyond that grandfather. They're just,
the 1,000, the ones that were in there before all this.
I, for one, would support a gas tax. I think that the last one was attempted and when it failed, but that was 8 years ago.
essentially, and I was on that committee, was what was put to the voters was a 7.5 cent gas tax with a 10-year sunset, and ironically, basically would be sunsetting around next year. It got, I think, defeated 70 to 30%.
But if that was in like 2014, 15, we're still kind of just coming out of the Great Recession.
It was heavily opposed by the oil industry, and that
So,
shot it down with money.
Yeah,
They
that's who
overwhelmed
shot it down. And then
Well,
just
we had
on a,
councilors also, there wasn't full support,
yes.
campaign against it.
And that, of course, also doesn't account for electric vehicles. So that would.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of challenges with gas taxes. One of them is that gas taxes are flat, is slowly starting to decline. It's a combination of higher miles per gallon for those with combustion engines. The fact that electric vehicles are going to become a bigger part of the picture. So most people are saying gas taxes, you need to be careful about relying on them over the medium to long term. The other thing is there's a fair bit of evidence that they're aggressive, meaning that they tend to impact talking about more in terms of percentage of their income that they spend, or even the percentage of their annual expenditure budget that they spend. I just really want to hear about this because I was curious, and that's basically what it said. It's still are regressive, so you tend to hit people you're expressing concerns about.
Any
That's why
sales
I
tax
tend
is
to
regressive.
prefer. I tend to prefer beer food and beverage. It doesn't have this direct connection to transportation to get that. So it's a little maybe hard for people to get, but it gets at visitors and it gets at people with more exposure.
You talked about vehicle registrations. I think it's a smart play, frankly. Has the city engaged at all with commissioners about their appetite for doing a registration fee on a countywide basis?
Not at this point.
Is there some sense on the council that that just is not going to be a fruitful
It's such a more difficult conversation, and we don't have the kind of control over it. You know, all these other things pointed out, whether it's tough gas tax, food and beverage, we can do them for our community. We can put them on the ballot. Don't, you know, it's just more straightforward. And I think there were, I have to go back and review some stuff. When we did the funding plan, when we did the transportation system, we spent a lot of time looking at our options. And I just have to review all the pros and cons of each one, and there was other cons.
I'm just curious if, you know, Ben's needs are readily apparent, but I'm sure Redmond's, sisters and others have similar needs that they need to address. It feels to me a logical choice to go to the commissioners and say, what about this? And if they're not going to play, then you do what you're doing now. But it seems like it would, if there's general agreement, that is a healthy and wise way to go about it from the outset. If that's not plan A gets shot down, you still have plan B, which is what you're talking about now. But it seems like that's the most equitable way, and also I think fosters what this area needs, which is, you know, intercity and communication and collaboration. No more me. You know, and if we're going to have transit, we're not going to have transit that just stops at the Bend city limit. You can't, you know, you get to Target and get out. As far as we go, you have to start thinking that way. And this seems like a really appropriate place to start because it's a universal need.
Jim's trying to say that.
I want to go back to Jim's point. I think that I don't think the point of the open response. The end is like other resort communities where $1 million homes is a constant. But the impact possibly near on working class tends to displace all of candidates bring gentrification in the community. So that we see more people, working class people, trying to commute. And so then that advocates the transportation system as well. Town, providing public service here, but you know, the transportation system just to get rid of the liability. So it creates this sort of conflict in how to best approach the problem and best here and now. That's not a realistic situation. But working class community now, transportation is adequate, and you see congestion and all that. So we're pushing two different ends here, and not really addressing the core issue of how we can best have a portable transportation system that works for the majority of people and provide something that's functional for the city. without creating a situation that's gonna be just a wealthy. And, sort of balances on sort of the social needs. So, with the point, it's the best to careful. Without the workers, yeah, it's not.
So that being, I'm gonna, at this point, I don't think anybody disagrees with you. For the last 5 or 6 minutes, everybody in the room, since we're gonna invite Southeast to be part of this. Real quick thoughts on how we might want to hold this forum, huh?
Do it as a point.
If they want
That was
to,
the
we
first I've heard of it, but I'll have to go to my board. And
Yeah.
Propose the idea. I think it's a good idea. I do want to let you know we're having an event over at Alphaville on the 14th of September.
Okay,
And right now, we want to kind of keep it social, but these issues are cropping up. So I'm going to look at my board and see if I can have maybe a board saying, transportation system fee. What are your concerns? Just list them. Just have.
so Jim, definitely go approach your board. We had not, literally, we were gonna have this meeting and then come to you because we didn't have anything to come with you until this meeting, because this all happened last week. Huh?
I was away.
Yeah, so that being acknowledged, so even if Southeast isn't part of this, and we will talk with NART and see if other neighborhood associations want to be, but the old farm is gonna do this. We're probably gonna shoot for here, just so we can control the weather, it'll be inside. And then if that's the case, and if anyone on the board, please correct me, but we are thinking like a forum of like 4 to 5 people, yes?
From the city.
Or us?
I don't, well, there's no reason for
Well,
any of us to be on the forum. We can control, we can ask the questions, we can hold the mic. We can do that. I'm asking,
City of
like,
Well,
this is,
Mike just said 2+1.
Yeah, I believe the mayor's gonna make her, the idea is that she and I would do most of these together.
okay,
And then probably at least 1 or 2 city staff will be there, whether they'll be part of the presentation.
Yeah, they might just be there to support. Yeah.
okay. Well, I'm just trying to, like I said, hash out these little quickums so he can then work on it for the next couple of weeks, then tell city staff, hey, Old Farm is gonna want this, help them with their presentation, kind of stuff like that. Are we still on the same page? Yes?
Quicken to the point with that presentation.
Well, I think that when you're talking about taxes, people's ears are gonna perk up though. So,
Yeah.
and Mike's, preliminary comments are pretty good points. I'm not too worried about it, but I do think you have to have those preliminary conversations about why. Because the point, and I had one of my in the weeds questions was to Wilson Avenue upgrade. As a writer, I really think it's awesome. I also know it's not sustainable to put that kind of division between the rider and the road everywhere. But as I write it, I also see that a lot of dirt and debris is getting trapped between the barrier and it's really becoming, that will become a problem pretty quick. And I was riding that with my son the other day, and I was going, I wonder if you can't run a street sweeper back there. It's not wide enough. How is
We actually are buying, or we have the money to purchase 2 vehicles. We probably need more like 6.
but that's a perfect example of, I think, point. We've created this infrastructure. Now we got to buy a special vehicle to clean it. And we don't have the funds for that. So, city people want things, well, they don't come free and they all have to be maintained. So that was a perfect example I thought of, the things most people don't think about. The everyday street sweeper doesn't work on Wilson because this is a new setup. So that was one. The other one I wanted to toss out because there's always lots of ways to spend money. But one of the things that Bendites long complained about is the hard work that gets done, backbreaking work that gets done to move snow and ice off the sidewalks, only for the snowplow to come by a half hour later and bury it with immovable ice. And then you get, for those of us who like to walk and would like to get out of our neighborhoods.
So now let's go back to the forum.
Let me
Tie this to the forum, not to.
Well, it is
another-
because it's a real world issue that people hear.
So I mean, part of what you're saying is you want to hear concrete examples, right?
Well, no, I'm saying, here's a thing that most Bendites who don't just drive in their cars and sit in their house would like to know. Can I walk down my sidewalk better with $15 million a year being spent on maintenance? Here's a maintenance thing the city does not currently address and sloughs it off on business and homeowners, even after the city machines make it impossible to clear it. Now, there's an opportunity to make a meaningful dent in the lives of people who are going to be contributing. So is it only about things we already know about, or would they consider some of these dollars for things that just have never been addressed before?
So then that might be something we can do for the forum. What do you want, not to ask the people on the forum, but to ask the people.
But
who
no, it's
show
also
up.
feedback from Mike to bring back to the group
Yeah.
to discuss.
No, everything is feedback for everybody, but I'm trying to say, there's no point to ask Mike, what does he want? We need to ask the people that show up, what do they want? And somehow figure out how to get that information to them. And if they decide to use it, that's on them.
That might be a freaking can of worms. Are you talking about doing a survey or just doing outreach on social media? Because that is.
I don't know. That is
Not
my,
gonna end that
that is my
well.
I'm
question.
going to suggest we don't go that far because
Okay.
I mean,
I think we should
we've had the,
leave it.
we do board things, and we talked about it extensively to lead into this. The average person who sits down there may not know much. And they're gonna, the bare bones of what needs to be presented. This is what we're doing, why, here's some of the ways we might think it works. You know, to get to the third or fourth layer about how it might be applied, et cetera, and how I might, you know, be okay with it. That's gonna be hard to ask them who's just sitting down and hearing it for the first time. We all have time, I think, to do follow-up surveys or to give people a chance to let this information percolate before we ask them. 'Cause-
Visuals and bullet points.
Big color graphs, images, no Sharpies.
Well, I think of like someone like myself, it takes me a really long time to absorb a lot of this information and truly see the big scope of it.
Yeah.
And I'm a very visual person. And paired with bullet points instead of like ongoing, this is like in a huge paragraph of information, my brain's gonna be like, ugh.
So a thought process at this forum, and then they can use it in some of their other presentations if there's like 10 poster boards that had like this, and this, and
Facts.
people walked in and sat down, that might help answer like, oh, or that, you know, that's what a.
Yeah.
Because people are gonna come in with their questions and they might see it already answered for them somewhere else.
Yeah,
and
so
they
this is
can
sort of
give
what I
more
was
time.
telling you. in the email.
That's a really good idea.
I mean, there could be one format idea could be, you know, the first portion is like, we have some stations, if you will, and there's some information that people can answer questions. And that will change. Then we do a presentation.
Then the
Then
presentation,
the Q&A section.
yes, knock out the little,
And you- You could also take, if you did the board's idea, and put it into a simple PowerPoint, which we could post prior to it. I think the more basic information people have before they come there, then you can get more meaningful questions asked.
yeah, whatever you set up in that meeting, we need it as files so we can put it out on social
So a
media.
standard historical city or parks or school district educational meeting is they have around 5 or 6 tables. There's like one person that sits in each one of those tables, there's maps, pictures, and you're just supposed to go around and talk to those people. We could do that, but if you guys want to do that and have the Q&A with council and the staff member too at the end of it, I mean, I think that would be better. But if you guys don't want to do that.
No, I think a Q&A is still really important.
I think it's huge, but if you're gonna
Yeah.
staff tables, they're talking about maybe
Because you're good-
four people. And you don't, I'm sure, I should speak, I wouldn't think our counselors want to sit behind those tables when they're about to get up and do the presentation.
Well,
Maybe I'm wrong.
that's what I want
No,
to hash
I
out
think
with today. If we can.
I don't want to, I'm not sure exactly what, from a city staff perspective, how many people we can get to show up, but yeah, I'm sure we can get it, you know, at least, I think we could have at least 4 or 5 people, between myself and Melanie, and I think, and maybe we can get one other counselor to commit as well, and maybe just a few more people.
Or
Right.
has been successful in the past for you guys.
Well,
Question.
yeah, right, I mean, I would ask staff for that a little bit too, like what do they think about some of these ideas? It seems like some combination of if we were able to send like, at least like, you know, review this website before you come, or that website's pretty good and it's being updated right now with some more information on it. A little more concrete examples, for example. And then did a little like come early, you'll be able to ask your initial questions and look at some images and stuff. Then we'll do a presentation for maybe 20 minutes max. You know, if you're saying even shorter, 15 minutes, and then we're going to have a more of a Q&A section. I think part of the challenge might be how do we how do we ensure a diversity of questions getting asked? Like, what's the process?
Pause for a second. Is there anybody else online right now?
Should we go ahead and end this?
We're gonna end the meeting. We'll send out more information.